I want to do something a little different today, and maybe occasionally I'll chime in with a commentary video here and there whenever the need arises, along with all my other content and streams on the channel. But I wanted to talk about social media, something that's been a part of our lives for at least two, maybe 3 decades now. Some of you have known nothing but social media since the day you were born, and it's just been there all along. You can't really imagine a life without the socials. But some of us older folk, yeah, we existed in a time before the social medias. So recently, I came to a decision to not renew my blue check mark on X. Last year when I got it, it was a really good deal, and I thought, you know what, I'll take advantage of the deal that I got a year ago with the 1 year discount in order to see what happens, see if it actually gives my channel any traction, and if anything positive came of me having a blue check mark. And to my credit, I did try to grow the follower base on my X account, even with a blue check mark. You not only posting my own videos and content and streams, but also my own opinions and replying to other people's posts. And to be honest, a year later, I really don't feel like it helps my channel at all. So when X wanted me to renew it, I looked at the price tag and it was $400. And I just sat there thinking, yeah, there's better things I can spend $400 on than renewing my blue check mark on X. So I decided to save my money and just allow the blue check mark to go away. And I think that was probably a wise financial decision on my part. And to be honest, there are things I like about socials. There's things I've grown to despise about it. And that's why I consider social media to be a double-edged sword. I'm not the first one to come up with that comparison. I won't be the last one. But it's true. Back in the day, before social media, we had to interact with other people in real life. I'm not saying that everybody that's on social media doesn't do this, but it feels like less people are interacting this way. We actually had to go meet people in person, right? Whether it was at school or outside of school or outside of work, at the various events like parks, state fairs, or concerts, or sports games, etc. So a lot of our socialing was actually done in person as opposed to on the internets, especially back in, I would say, all the way up to the late 90s. But yeah, we had to actually talk to each other in person, interact in person. And we also did a lot of talking to each other on this thing called the telephone. Yeah, some of you may have heard of that. So yeah, we did a lot of that back in the day. And for long distance communication, because long distance phone calls were pretty pricey, a lot of us would keep in touch with each other, especially friends that would move away or family members. They would become pen pals, right? And so we would just pull out a sheet of paper and just write some letters to each other, fold that letter up in an envelope, lick it, stamp it, address it to whoever we wanted to send it to, and get a snail mail to each other, which took a lot longer than a few seconds to get from point A to point B. But that's pretty much how we did it back in the day. But then eventually we ended up getting some improvements to communicating with each other, thanks to the age of social media, such as the emails. The emails came first, the electronic mail, as they originally called it. And then the IMs. It was really amazing when I saw a friend of mine, his dad was actually communicating to somebody he knew across the country with instant messenger. I think it was ICQ, and they actually were just chatting on ICQ. And I thought that was the coolest thing. And of course, yeah, obviously we had ICQ in the early days, AOL, AIM Instant Messenger, Yahoo Instant Messenger. A lot of those aren't really used anymore. Cell phones became more popular, so instead of just calling people, people started texting each other more. And then we also ended up with various social media platforms. My personal favorite will always be MySpace. I really wish that somebody would buy MySpace, obviously the URL myspace.com, and bring it back. I would love to see a return of MySpace. A little old, little new, a little bit of both, right? Of what made it so appealing to people back in the early days. And then from MySpace, there was also Facebook, and then eventually we got YouTube and various other socials, Twitter, which is now X, Instagram, Vine. I think Vine is coming back, right? I think Jack, who was the original founder of Twitter, who sold it to Elon, I think he's bringing back Vine. Could be mistaken about that, but I think that's going to happen. And then there's so many other ones like Snapchat, TikTok. The list goes on and on. Some have come and gone over the years, like MySpace, RIP MySpace. And don't get me started on the dating apps. There was a time when we actually had to ask people out in person, or people had to ask us out in person, and that was a struggle because you come across somebody you like, and then you'd get really nervous, and you wouldn't ask them out, so you feel like you missed your opportunity. But then you would ask somebody out, and then most of the time they would politely decline. They wouldn't accuse you of anything awful these days. Like, yeah, that happens all the time now, right? But back then, they would just politely say, no, sorry, I have a boyfriend, or I'm just not interested in you. All that kind of stuff. But, we have dating apps now. And, before I ended up in my most recent relationship, I did use the dating apps like so many of you did. And I would say overall, not very successful. Most of the time they were bots. Even back then they were bots years ago. Now it's probably all AI. And anyone that was real, they probably would just swipe left on you when you would swipe right. And anyone that you were interested in, yeah, that's what they would usually do. But anyone that was interested in you, you would probably swipe left on them. So that was always the conundrum for the most part. But there was, the rare occasion of actually coming across somebody on the dating apps. And there are some people that have managed to get into relationships and end up getting married thanks to the dating apps back in the day. And there's also horror stories out there as well, and tales of catfishing. So a lot of nasty things have occurred too because of the infamous dating apps. And don't get me started on the bots. Once again, now probably nothing more than AI. But yeah, dating apps pretty much suck. They're kind of pointless. And they weren't really used for dating, to be honest. A lot of it was just about the hookup, right? Just hooking up with each other. Wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. Or wham, bam, thank you, sir. And then moving on to the next one. So, yeah, I feel like that kind of was a negative for society in general. But to each their own. And that's where I get to this point of whereas social media has really done a good job of bringing us together across the world. You're able to communicate and make friends with people that you originally never would have back in, the late 90s. Now I have friends in the UK and Ireland and Europe and other parts of the world. And that's a positive. But the negative is that I feel like it's kind of dehumanized us, and we stop seeing each other as human beings. At least some people do. And I think that's where the nastiness has really come out in social media. Instead of having like civil discussions about things or simple disagreements, people just demonize each other all day long. Now, there are people that still have civil conversations, but it does seem like a lot more folks out there on the social medias don't exactly treat that person, their username, like a fellow human being. And I think that, I guess, being able to hide behind a social media name on a various platform, I guess allows some people a little bit of courage to be a keyboard warrior instead of simply sitting down at a table discussing topics with another person. I think people would probably, for the most part, handle each other a little bit more in a civilized fashion with their disagreements than how it is now. And that's why I feel like it really is a double-edged sword, because so many people are just out there hating on each other, demonizing each other, and if you don't agree with somebody 100%, you're the worst person ever. They'll call you all sorts of names. And it also allows a lot of nasty people with their terrible ideas to flourish on social media. So we won't go there on that, but I think some of you know what I'm talking about when it comes to individuals and more extreme topics are allowed to flourish as well. And I think that's a big problem, is that the extremes are usually the ones that gain traction on social medias, like X, for example, where you basically have to be like far left or far right to really get any interest from others. And anyone in the middle seems to be kind of forgotten, and no one really cares about that these days, because I feel like we're just, at least in the West, I feel like we've become so divided as a society because of these ideologies, far right, far left, not trying to get too political. But, it prevents people from being able to actually meet in the middle and talk about things and have discussions. And then other people go into their various echo chambers, whether on Reddit or other like forums, platforms, etc. And then they just talk about everything they agree with about their platform, and just demonize every other group's platform. So I feel like, in a way, even if it has brought society together, social media, and has definitely led to me making a lot of friends throughout the world, which I'm grateful for, and also keeping up with family and old friends that I lost touch with, that were once real life friends back in high school, for example. It has also cut the other way and has really separated us in a lot of ways. And it's I'd say it's dehumanized people. I'm sorry, but that's how I feel about it. I think that what we need to do as a society, and this is just my humble opinion, what do I know, is I think it takes everybody to get us back to civility, and I really wish we would. And the first step is to realize that person you're talking to is a human being. Well, then again, they could be AI because of the rise of AI, not just with dating apps, but also on social media. There's definitely bots that follow people, and bots and AI that become so sophisticated now and programmed. They even leave comments. And it was a lot more obvious a few years ago, but in recent history, it's become a lot more difficult to determine who's real or who's a bot anymore. And so you never know who you might actually be talking to online. It could just be an AI bot. And all this time you thought you were talking to a person that's one of your viewers, subscribers, or followers, but they're not even real. So what's real anymore, right? And so many people have bot accounts and fake followers and fake subscribers. I mean, it just really feels like sometimes that maybe the internet is dead theory might be real, or the dead internet theory. I think that's what it's called. But yeah, I just think that even though we have those problems like the dehumanization, the extremisms, the bots, the AI, I do think that there's still a human element to social media that brings people together. And that's one of the positives of the platforms that we have, along with all the slop, because there's plenty of that across every single platform, especially TikTok and their stupid challenges. But yeah, I mean, YouTube's guilty of it as well. So is X, so is Facebook, all of them. They all have good stuff and they all have bad stuff. It's not exactly one thing or the other. But yeah, it is sad that it does feel like we've kind of grown distance as a society. And I think that we do need to get back to being more in touch with each other's humanity, excluding the bots. Okay, I'm not talking about them. But those people that actually are humans that you're interacting with, or that vice versa, at the end of the day, even if you disagree with somebody, I think that it's important to remember that these people are human beings. And unless they have like extreme opinions, like really dangerous, far left, far right, like other opinions that I won't go into, you get the idea. Then I think most people are capable of simply, agreeing to disagree, be civil, and move along. And also focus on the things that we do have in common as a species, because almost everybody on this planet has something in common with everybody else to various degrees. And instead of focusing so much on the differences, which seem to be what is promoted on social media, like X, for example, and elsewhere, I think it's also important to recognize similarities, common interests, and likes, and maybe start as simple as, we all like to breathe, right? We all like fresh air and fresh water and sunlight. Well, some goths out there, y'all don't really like sunlight too much now, do you? Just kidding. I'm of course referring to my better half. She doesn't like going out in the sun as much. And we also share this big, beautiful ball together that we should absolutely take better care of. Not this ball in a no man's sky. I'm talking about Earth, okay? Hopefully y'all understand what I was referring to. So yeah, I just really wish that we as a species or society or both would, recognize the positives of social media, but at the same time understand that there are things that have done harm to us. Like no longer treating each other like human beings and going out of our way just to demonize somebody, even if you agree with that person, let's just say 9 times out of 10. And then you're like, no, it's that one thing that we disagree with on that's going to justify me wanting to cancel you or call you all these god awful names, phobes, even if it's not true. And that's another big reason why I'm just kind of tired of X. Even though I do kind of partake in it myself, admittedly. I mean, I think we all to various degrees like to do a little shit posting, a little trolling. It happens. But I think I'd much rather attempt to find the better angels of our nature once again and get us as a society back to somewhere in the middle. That's kind of like my goal in life. One of my goals is to find a way to have the raging waters of the far left and far right subside in the hopes of trying to get more people back in the middle, back to the table, and start looking for common ground and stop treating each other so poorly. Because, yeah, we all have differences. That's pretty obvious. I have a lot of differences from you. You have a lot of differences from me and everyone else. But we also have things that we do share in common. And it's okay to have differences. There's nothing wrong with that. That's part of what makes us each an individual. But it doesn't make me any more or less human than any of you. And I hope that I'm considered the same in that regard. So yeah, I kind of go back and forth on social media. I do like being able to keep in touch with friends and family and also subscribers. But, there's also been definitely negative experiences that myself and many others have gotten through social media, which is unfortunate. But I guess I just really wish that it wasn't like this. But as the old saying goes, it is what it is. So I just hope that one day we can mature a little bit and find a way forward and get past this time that we live in. Especially in the West, when it feels like you have to be in one side or the other, one camp or the other. You can't just sit in the middle like I do and others and just say, hey, can't we all just try to get along? I mean, that's all I really want to do. But others would beg to differ while they're calling me wonderful names. But that's fine. It's just words at the end of the day. I don't really care about that at all. But it's just my own personal observations regarding this subject. You can't close the box, right? It was open 2 or 3 decades ago. I mean, unless, we have a major event happen that sends us all back into the Stone Age, right? And goodbye society, goodbye electricity, goodbye internet. And then we're forced to survive the way humanity did prior to all of our fancy achievements and inventions. But I guess in conclusion, what really matters is those people that are most important in our lives, and not to ignore the fact that there are people like our friends, our family, that we have to focus on more and put them above the socials, and also the people that have become our friends through social media, through all these different platforms, because you have to take the good with the bad when it comes to social media. That's just the way it goes. But at the end of the day, it's interesting how far things have gone since I was a kid. You know, there was a time when we didn't have these social medias where we had to interact in person with each other or over the phone, as I talked about, or on rare occasion you send a letter to a family member or to a long distance friend, or through a pen pal program. Back in school, they actually had us with other classes in other states and in the country. They would have us randomly pick out a pen pal. I think it was done by some program back in the day, and I ended up with a pen pal, somebody up in New York, and they would send me a letter with like a New York postcard with a Statue of Liberty. I really wish I still had that postcard. And then I would send them a postcard, of Texas, and and we pen palled a little bit, but it didn't last too long, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, this is the way that we've always been. We've always been the type of society that likes to communicate with each other. We're very social creatures. Well, some of us are. Others rather be left alone, and I kind of go back and forth on that. There are definitely some days I want to take my phone, especially after all the robocalls and robo-scam texts I get, because I get them all the time, and just chunk my phone and then just go live in the middle of nowhere. But I'm still part of a society, so for better or worse, that's just the way it goes. But what do you think needs to be done to improve society in general, along with, I guess, social media? What is the core problem, in your opinion? Can it even be fixed, or do you think it'll only get worse from here? Your thoughts, views, and opinions about social media, welcome, as always, below in the comments section.